Our next speaker is going to be Dan McClellan, and he is a senior at BYU. He is majoring in ancient Near Eastern studies. He is also the editor of Student Antigua, the student journal that actually coincides with this very conference. A side note, just so that you're aware, this is the second year that we're putting on the SANE conference, which is actually the brainchild of Dan. So he's the one who came up with this in the first place and has put it all together. So please keep that in mind when you welcome him. His presentation today on the initiation ideology and Apuleius Golden Ass. Thank you.
Thanks, Seth. I should tell Seth I don't need my head to get any bigger than it is. I cut my hair last night and I was like, wow, I've got an enormous head. Well, at least you're not playing Journey anymore because I wouldn't be able to focus. Apuleius' Golden Ass, which is also known as the Metamorphosis, is a 2nd century CE Latin novel based loosely on a much shorter Greek original by a similar name. In Apuleius' expanded version, Lucius, a curious young man from Thessaly who is infatuated with magic, accidentally transforms himself into an ass. He can be transformed back into his human form if he manages to eat a garland of roses, but he finds himself confronted by various degrees of trouble and misadventure before this becomes a possibility. The book is actually fairly long. Book 11, the last book, is where our focus will be concentrated. In this book, Lucius has a vision in the night of the goddess Isis, who promises to transform him back into a human through the ministration of one of her priests in exchange for his devotion to her cult. The next day, at a procession dedicated to Isis, her priest offers Lucius a garland of roses, which he eats, quote, with greedy mouth, which turns him then back into a human. He joins the procession, and he's showcased in it for the remainder of the day, which is described in great detail. Over the following days, Lucius anxiously awaits his initiation into the cult of Isis, and when it is finally carried out, we get this rather cryptic explanation because he's bound to silence regarding the details of the ritual. No uninitiated were allowed to be filled in on the details. It says, I drew near to the confines of death and trod the threshold of Proserpina, who is the queen of Hades. And before returning, I journeyed through all the elements. At dead of night, I saw the sun gleaming with bright brilliance. I stood in the presence of the gods below and the gods above and worshipped them from close at hand. And he explicitly says, this is all I can say about it. Today, I hope to unpack some of the initiation typology or ideology manifested in these 3 short sentences, and the ritual aspect of the cult of Isis as represented in the rest of Apuleius' Book 11 in the procession and in some other rituals. I'm going to begin with a little background on Isis, her relationship with the ass, and her adoption by Greco-Roman culture. Isis was an ancient Egyptian goddess born of Geb, god of the earth, and Nut, goddess of the overarching sky. At some point, she absorbed the characteristics of the goddess Hathor, mother of Horus. In the Egyptian mythologies of kingship, Isis had a brother husband named Osiris, who was killed by the chaos monster Seth. He left. I was going to say who is represented by our friend Seth, who is moderating the session. So Seth dismembers Osiris, dumps his body in the Nile, and Isis has to wander through the world before she finally retrieves the pieces of Osiris's body, bandages him back together, and then through the sympathies of other gods, Osiris is restored to life, and he and his sister wife conceive Horus, one of the chief deities of Egypt and associated with the pharaoh. Basically, the god Horus is the pharaoh when he's not in this world. So it's the eternal aspect of pharaoh. This is an ancient statue of Isis nursing the young Horus. A lot of early Christian iconography actually is based upon this idea. Mary nursing Christ on her lap is actually based most likely on this statue. Now, as is explained to Lucius, the ass is the most reprehensible member of the animal kingdom to Isis. The ass is Seth, the chaos monster against which Isis is perpetually at war to guarantee the orderly continuation of the cycles of nature. If Seth wins, the cycles of nature fail, and humanity can't survive. the maintenance of cosmic order was one of the main priorities of Egyptian ritual, and the first Isis temples and many temples throughout the world were constructed with that end in mind. In fact, our word ordinance derives from a word meaning to put into order. So the idea of an ordinance originally was based on the idea of maintaining the cosmic order. Thus, humanity, by entering the temple, enters into a sort of partnership with Isis to combat chaos, personified by Seth. Here's an image of Seth from an ancient Egyptian papyrus. Well, by this time it's been during the Greco-Roman period, so it has some Greek on it. The text above him reads, "Terrible yelling God." The interesting thing, though, is that the first letters of each word, the sigma, the eta, and the theta, spell out the name Seth. Who knew papyrology could be this exciting? This is really what we live for. Isis cults grew popular throughout the Mediterranean after Alexander the Great's conquests, but Roman rulers generally condemned what they believed to be the rather depraved morality of the secret rites. As with ancient Christianity and even modern Mormonism, the non-initiated ranted and raved about whatever immoral excesses they imagined took place behind closed doors. Caligula is said to have restored the cult, and we have some indication that he even took part in the initiations dressed as a woman, which hopefully doesn't surprise anyone. After Caligula, several Roman rulers seem to have adopted a syncretic perspective on Isis and her cult. She was harmonized with the Phrygian Cybele, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that correctly, goddess of the earth, and several others. Apuleius, the author of the Golden Ass, records Isis claiming, "The whole world worships this single godhead under a variety of shapes and liturgies and titles. She names a dozen or so goddesses from other nations, concluding that her true identity is known exclusively to the Egyptians." Now, evidence for a number of mystery cults in addition to Isis's have been preserved in the textual and archaeological record, the cults of Mithras, Isis, Demeter, and Dionysus being the most prolific, but as Dr. Benson also mentioned, we have the cult, it's Eleusis and several others. They all share a number of common elements, though. And as our evidence for the details of the initiation is sparse and kind of spread out across these cults, I'm going to incorporate information from the other cults to try and fill in the gaps, much like they use frog DNA in Jurassic Park to fill in the gaps in dinosaur DNA, hopefully with the same degree of success. We don't know for sure how much of the ritual and symbolism is of Hellenistic origin, but based on the similarities with other Roman and Greek cults, probably a significant amount. This is one of the areas where further research would be, is pretty important. My first point of discussion is purification, which took place before the initiation began and which was also a main part of the non-initiation related rituals like the procession. When it is decided that Lucius is ready for initiation, he is led to a bathhouse with a group of initiates and the priest. In the words of Apuleius, "The priest sprinkled water all over me until I was wholly purified." This state of ritual purity was required of everyone who had entered the temple, and the baths mentioned in the Golden Ass are said to be nearby. The archaeological record shows they were often even connected to the temple, similar to the basin incorporated in the Solomon's temple. This is a drawing of the remains of an Lyceum in Ephesus. The basin on the right was for purification by sprinkling. The basin was said to hold Nile water. Obviously at Ephesus they didn't have actual water from the Nile, so it was symbolic. And this was important for Isis worship, since Osiris was rescued from the Nile, and the gods provided the flooding, which was so crucial to the development and survival of civilization in Egypt. In Hellenistic areas, like I said, the water system only symbolically held Nile water, and in other areas where no permanent water systems were available, they incorporated the use of pitchers and jugs. And we have this bas-relief, I think it's a bas-relief. We see a priest carrying a large pitcher, second from the left. This procession was a regular part of the Isis cult as they sanctified themselves in their various cult accoutrements and the statues every day. Greek and Egyptian influence is evident in Apuleius' lengthy description of the event, which is actually fairly accurately represented here. This first picture is probably one described in the text as a venerable image of the supreme deity. Apuleius describes it as a small vase skillfully hollowed out on a perfectly rounded base, with remarkable Egyptian figures fashioned on its outer surface. It had not a high neck, but it projected